It's a question that every consultant asks. How do I know which office is the right office for me? But underlying that question is a more important question that you're probably asking yourself. In a competitive industry like consulting, which office provides me the best chance to break in? Today, we're going to cover that information in this episode. And as we're about to dive in, please make sure that you subscribe for more great content about consulting firms, consulting job opportunities, and the case interview. There are common questions that we see prospective consultants ask when it comes to selecting an office to apply to. Number one, is that office going to have a fair representation of people of my background? i.e., do they need the skills and experience that I offer? Do they hire undergrads in that office? Do they hire PhDs in that office? Focusing on the kinds of backgrounds that are represented in that office and whether you see yourself as being a fit there. Number two, should I adventure into an office selection based on how competitive or popular or how uncompetitive or unpopular the office is? This is an important question to factor in. And how do you know how competitive an office is? Sometimes it's even hard to tell what that is as well. Should I explore an international office so I have the opportunity to see the world? Is that better to do upfront, or should I plan to work for a year or two and then transition over to an international office within my firm? Finally, should I put all of my chips in one basket? Should I apply only to New York offices or only to Boston offices? Or is it better when I wait out 2 to 3 different offices in my percentage breakdown for the application? These are really important questions, and your future hangs in the balance. So let's answer them today. Well, these are really helpful questions, and we're going to answer them in just a moment. They're also unhelpful questions to answer when you're thinking about the office selection process. Number one, what percentage of the interviews granted are given offers? Understanding the offer rates might feel like you're being strategic, but it's actually really hard data to gather. It can really leave the wrong tone with somebody that you're networking with. If you're trying to game the system, you have to do it in a way that's a little bit more savvy. Second, the prestige of the office. Again, if you ask somebody in Dallas whether Dallas is as prestigious as Chicago, it's not a great look for the Dallas office when you're trying to social climb your way into the firm. Finally, picking offices that are disconnected from your life. Let's say you pick the Paris office, but you don't speak French. You've never been to France, and you don't have anything to add to that office. It can feel like you're selecting an office just for you and not for the fit with a firm, which is a much better metric overall. If you follow these unhelpful criteria when you're networking and trying to suss out the different offices, it will come across as though you're trying to figure out how to navigate your way into the best opportunity. But the savvy consultants to be will think about something different. They think about how to weigh up different offices to get an insight into the culture, to figure out an office on the basis of fit for you. That kind of tailored approach is a much better approach. And I'll talk about some specifics for how you can present that when you're networking in the firm and how you can assess what might be really valuable for you. Number one, select the top cities that you see yourself happily living in, not just now, but in the future. Why? Because consulting firm networks are powerful. Whoever you're working with, the partners in that office, for example, are going to be your best advocates for the future. In 10 years after you leave, they're the ones that will call you and ask you to come back. They're the ones who will open their Rolodexes to you. And guess where those Rolodexes will be based? In the same cities. So while I certainly have a global network from Bain, and I worked with a few people outside of my office, which was the Atlanta office, my best networks now professionally are still in Atlanta, even though I've lived in California for over 15 years. Isn't that wild? Well, it's something important to think about. The best office for you where you think you could live happily, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. The second criteria that's really valuable are the industries that are based out of that local area. One of the things that I found fascinating is that, for example, Boston was a hub for healthcare and financial services. New York, of course, was a hub for financial services, but also consumer products. Los Angeles was a hub for TMT, telecom, media, and entertainment. San Francisco was a hub for tech. Think a few years down the road, not based on where you want to be, but based on what you want to learn. Present that as an opportunity and find out what the mix of projects is inside an office. That can tell you a lot about the work that you'll be doing day in and day out. Number 3, with work styles changing, some firms will ask you to come into the office 5 days a week, some 3 days a week, some never, or you can work from anywhere. The firm's staffing model and its remote or hybrid or in-office cycles will matter a lot. For example, if you work for McKinsey, you have a pretty virtual process and a firm where you can work from almost anywhere, almost anytime. You're staffed in a global model with people outside of your office. You work with them virtually. Sometimes you'll travel to the client. And this model helps McKinsey really maintain the most flexibility with all of their staffing. But of course, it means that if you're in the Cleveland office or the Detroit office or the Austin office or the New York office, it really just doesn't matter as much because the work that you do will be primarily on your pods, your teams, and can be partially remote or on the client site. Whereas if you're working for a firm that has much more in-office presence, let's say you're working for an economic consulting firm, you're going to be in the office all day, every day, all week, every week, and your office matters ultimately. You want to really ask a lot of questions about the culture of the office, the way that people balance their life, how their commute is. So understanding the dynamics of the in-office environment in those kind of situations are very helpful. Number 4, and last but certainly not least, is office size. This ended up being one of my deciding criteria when I had the option between the Bain Boston office, the Bain New York office, and the Bain Atlanta office. It was the size of the office. Is it a small and growing office? If so, there are actually more opportunities for early promotions in that office. Is it a large established office? Well, there's more opportunities for work across different practice areas and even back office functions like sales and marketing for the firm. So understanding what's happening across the board in those offices and where future opportunities might come from, that can give you some real perspective on the firm and the office. In summary, there's a difference between trying to game the system, which means that you're using everything to your advantage, and trying to understand the system to figure out where things are happening and why, and where you fit best. And the second will resonate entirely with other people. Of course, they're smart and strategic and capable and have options too. But the first will come across as a little swarmy and a little bit slimy, and you're not going to have the traction inside your networking relationships that you would want. So go for information, but also go for resonance. Focus on a place where you think you would be happy in the long term. And at the end of the day, pull the trigger, make a call, and dive into the application in the office that you think would be the best fit for you.